we'll just hold on a couple of minutes to allow a few more participants to join before we get started. So just as people trickle in, I'll do a very quick introduction to the panelists today. So my name's Dom. I'm from Goldsmiths, University of London, and I'm joined by Georgie Redbarnes from Norwich University of the Arts and Charlotte Davison from Loughborough University. So just quickly going to introduce the topics today and talk to you a little bit about what we are going to be running through during the presentation. So I'll quickly introduce the idea of fine art and design and what those areas of study really encompass and what we really mean by those two study areas in the UK. And then we'll talk a little bit about why you might choose to study art and design in the UK. And also speak a little bit about some of the courses on offer at our institutions before introducing our institutions to you and where they are in the UK. And then hopefully towards the end of the presentation, we'll have some time left also for you to ask any questions that you have. So I'd encourage you all, as things pop up in your mind throughout the presentation, to just ask those questions in the Q&A function. There's a chat function and a Q&A function. It would be excellent if you can pop your questions in the Q&A function. If any stray into the chat, I'm sure we'll pick those up as well. So first of all, what is fine art? So fine art, we can see, is an area of exploring kind of visual arts, generally speaking, is what you probably think of immediately. So things like sculpture, painting, videography, filmmaking, so still a moving image. But what you might not think of immediately are things like performance art, sound art, and also other areas, so participatory art, for example. So you see a kind of broad dictionary definition here of how fine art allows people to express their intellectual ideas through some sort of aesthetic form. And universities in the United Kingdom have fantastic facilities to generally support fine art pursuit in all of these different areas. So you would imagine a traditional studio space, probably when you're thinking of fine art, somewhere for you to paint, perhaps illustrate or make sculpture. At our institution, there's lots of opportunity to explore traditional forms like ceramics, textile based fine art work, glass work, all sorts of things, whether you're studying fine art or what you might think of as design. So design generally is considered to be a way of creating or solving problems and thinking perhaps about the form of your solution to certain problems. So whereas fine art is an expression of ideas through an aesthetic form, design is more about the process of thinking through a problem and coming up with a solution. The traditional forms of design might overlap heavily. So you might think of the siloed design areas as kind of what you immediately consider to be design. So maybe fashion design, maybe graphic design, industrial, even maybe process design, but maybe particularly at university level, what you'll also be looking at is the relationship between those different siloed design practices and their overlap in certain circumstances. So if you work as a designer, for example, you'll often be in an interdisciplinary team with people with different design specialisms, and many of our universities will emulate that in the study environment. So if you think of a very basic piece of design, something like this branded SodaStream bottle, you can see there's obviously a bit of product design in here. You've also got some graphic design here with some branding, and you've got a kind of an ergonomic thing that fits into something else. So there's quite a few different areas. There's kind of resistant material knowledge that's required to produce an item like this. And those different areas of expertise don't always reside within a single person. So that should give you kind of broad overview for the different areas of design the different meanings or kind of definitions of fine art and design that we have. And I'm now just going to hand over to Georgie to talk to you a little bit more.
Thanks, Dom. I think we might just need to go back one slide. I think we'll just skipped one.
Sorry.
No worries. That's the one, perfect. We got there. So yes, so I'm Georgie Redbarns. I work at Norwich University of the Arts, and I just wanted to briefly kind of cover why you might choose to study art and design in the UK. I mean, really, it's about the quality of courses that you can choose from at British universities. UK has an incredible design legacy, and there are some very famous universities in the UK, but there's also a huge range of different kinds of university that you can choose to study at. And you can expect some incredible quality teaching at British universities. If you're studying art and design programs, you can really expect that the people that you're learning from, your academics, are often going to be practitioners themselves, and by that we mean that they are also going to be a practicing artist or a director or an animator. So the people you're learning from connect themselves with what it means to be a maker and creator in today's society, and bring that amazing knowledge to you. There's a huge range of different subject majors that you can choose, and we're going to cover some examples for you a bit later in this presentation. How you kind of learn at an art and design course at university is usually really mimics what happens when you actually go into the world of work. And by that we mean that, well, certainly at my university, we don't assess students on examinations. So we assess students on the work that they make. And we will set work according to a project brief. And students are given a brief and they work to a deadline. And that really mimics how you would work within industry. So it kind of helps get you into that mentality. And obviously, it's important to say that if you were to come overseas and study here in Britain, then you're going to have an international experience. And by that, I mean, you're not just going to only meet other British students here in the UK, but many of our universities are incredibly multicultural places. So you're making those connections with people all around the world that are going to see you through life and through your career when you leave university as well. Next slide, please. So Dom's already covered a little bit on career preparation, but creative art and design degree is going to, through the actual teaching itself, help prepare you for when you leave university and you want to launch your creative career. And we do that in a number of different ways. So I've just picked out a few examples of things that might happen on your course. Things like having professionals from industry come and deliver, whether that be a lecture or a workshop, or coming in to feedback on your work. So one week you might have an Oscar-winning visual effects artist coming to deliver a workshop, and another week you might have a talk from a world-famous artist like Anthony Gormley, for example. And then there are also going to be opportunities usually for networking within your specific industry. So, for example, our third year photography students were in London last week for a networking event with professional photographers, where they were showing them their portfolio work, and they were having informal networking as well. So that helps you build your confidence and learn how to kind of promote yourself when you leave university. And as we've kind of covered already, those projects that you do at university they are going to generate a lot of work, and you can then use that work to build your professional portfolio that you can then tailor much more to the kind of career that you want to have when you leave. And then you can use that when you are promoting yourself when you leave university. And there are some fantastic careers teams based at British universities, and often careers teams will offer you support for life. So once you graduate, at any point in your career, if you need support with any aspects of looking for work or changing career paths, that career team is going to be there to support you. And what we see is often the case in people that are going to work in the creative industries is they might want support, particularly if they want to set up their own business. So a careers team is going to help you to learn, contract law, learn about competitive pricing, and all those kind of very practical things that you need to know in order to be able to operate in the world of work. Obviously, internship opportunities can be really valuable ways to build up your CV. And some universities will offer internships as a formal part of your program. Other universities like ours will have it as an informal part where we will help you to identify businesses that you want to approach to ask for internship opportunities. And to give an example, the fashion communication and promotion students have gained success in working with companies like Vivienne Westwood and Adidas, for example. And obviously, as a creative, you want to showcase your work, get your work out there to the world as much as possible. So through your course, you'll have opportunities to exhibit your work. So whether that's showing work at the Tate Britain in London, for example, as one of our fine art graduates is currently doing, or whether that's entering industry competitions. For fashion, for example, there's a London Graduate Fashion Week, which is where universities from all over Britain will send their graduates to show their final collection to industry. And that's a really exciting time. Thanks, Dom. So there are a huge range of different programs that you can choose from, and we've just picked a few at each of our universities just to give you an idea. But obviously there are so many more courses that you can choose, and we're going to give you some tips on how you might want to research some of these courses and picking your university, both in this presentation and some of our other sessions as well. But you can see, obviously, all of us here offer fine art, as you would expect, but you might not have heard of some of the other programs here, like UX design or storytelling, for example. So I just wanted, we're each of us going to pick out a couple of examples for you of different programs that you might want to study at our universities. So I just wanted to start with illustration. If you could move us to the next slide, Dom. Thanks. So illustration is really all about storytelling through image. It's about how can you communicate an idea that's either written down or as text or spoken word. How can you communicate that message in a visual way? And at Norwich, you learn about illustration in a practical way through mastering both kind of digital animation as well as analog techniques. So one week you might be dealing with copper plate printing, which is a very traditional way of printmaking. And another week you might be dealing with learning about Adobe Illustrator, for example. And then it actually it's a very broad subject that actually you can end up doing interactive installations, for example. So many people might come to illustration thinking, I want to be a children's book illustrator. And that's the most common thing that we hear. But actually the kind of careers that you can have as an illustrator are really broad. And I wanted to just give you a few examples of some of our illustration graduates, just to show you really the range of careers that you could potentially go and do once you studied illustration. So the top example is by Tom Abbas-Smith, and he is self-employed, and his clients are commercial clients. So the example here is from a Lululemon campaign that he designed. He's also worked for Pinterest and Nespresso. So his design style is attracting some big commercial brands. At the bottom right, you can see a design by Ollie Hurst, and he really focuses on illustration for non-fiction texts, specifically scientific texts. So he is the illustrator in residence this year for The Lancet, which is a very famous medical journal. So he's designing the front covers for their journals. And then you've got something completely different, which is from last year's graduates. That is actually a collaboration between an illustration graduate and a graphic design graduate. And this was a piece of work for an NGO based in London, and they were redesigning a basketball court. So they're stood there on this very cool basketball court that is using Coco Lam's designs. So 3 very different kinds of illustration work, just to give you an idea. Next slide, thanks. So I wanted to also talk to you briefly about kind of graphics, and many people will kind of feel familiar with the idea of graphic design. At Anyway, we actually have 4 graphics-based programs. The most recent one is user experience design. So that's really applying design to new technologies and how we interact with particularly digital technology. But graphic design covers a huge range of different kinds of projects. So an example here from a graphic communication graduate, Ruby Douglas, is the purple one there, and that is graphic communication typically deals with kind of changing people's views on social or environmental issues. And Ruby's design here was for an industry competition. So she won the Creative Conscience Award for this, and it was a project that she called Straight Shouldn't Be Default. And it was about how can you have a graphics project that shows solidarity with the LGBTQ plus community. So she took very kind of typical typefaces that we use every day and basically made them a little bit less straight, in her words, just to kind of draw attention to LGBTQ plus communities. And on the top right there is an example by Katie Collins. So this was probably something that you feel, yeah, I feel comfortable with that. Graphic design, doing a rebrand for a company. And this was, again, this was for a industry competition set by a graphic design agency called Bulletproof. So they have clients like Tim Hortons and Cadbury, for example, and her design won her an internship with that company. And then you've got a design at the bottom right there, which is by Tom French. So he was doing a concept for a sustainable drinks brand. And that, again, was a competition entry for another design agency called Brand Opus. And they work with some of the biggest food and drink brands in the UK, like Carling, for example, and McCain's Fries. And his competition entry won him, again, an industry internship and a cash prize. So there are some really exciting projects that you can be part of during your degree programme. Okay, I think I've spoken quite enough, so over to you, Dom.
Thanks, Georgie. It's super interesting. It's interesting to hear about your sort of more siloed programs and the fact that you've got 4 nuanced graphic programs at NUA. Goldsmiths is almost completely the opposite. So our approach, I'll start with the bottom program, which is design, is to actually try to bring all of the different disciplines in within one program. So if you study design at Goldsmiths, we bring students who are interested in graphic design, product design, as I mentioned earlier, textile or fashion design, user experience design, social design, all within one program. So there is only one bachelor program at Goldsmiths, which is the BA design program. This program is consistently voted in the top 10, to be honest, the top 5 design programs in the UK because of the uniqueness of this approach to interdisciplinary study. So I think something that sets the program apart at Goldsmiths is the amount of time you spend in the studio. So it is has the highest attendance requirement of any design program, bachelor design program in the UK, because you are required to be in the studio from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. every day. It's quite unusual for a creative industries subject. It's quite an interesting approach to pedagogy and sort of just teaching methodology. And the idea is that if students are working within boundaries, that you can also access studios outside of those hours, but if you are sort of rigidly working within the boundaries of a kind of 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. everyday studio practice-based program, then within those boundaries and within that cross-pollination in an environment where there are lots of different students with lots of different design interests, come some extremely interesting projects. And in our design program, I've seen everything from very traditional design-based practice, where students are looking to address certain issues. Furniture design is a good example, where students are just building aesthetic forms for, say, smaller living spaces, which are becoming increasingly relevant and kind of demanded by the kind of retail sector. To take the same example, social design products, which have begun as sort of simple furniture design products, but which have then taken ideas like a table and extrapolated that to kind of its wider significance to society. And I'm thinking specifically of a project where one of our BA design students created a table from collected kind of materials from around London parks, and then used this table, which was a really big sort of monolith table, to create social spaces for people who didn't have fixed residence. So people who were part of the homeless community, or who were sort of temporarily out of fixed accommodation in the capital, to literally physically come around this table. And it kind of started off as quite I think a cerebral kind of intellectual idea, but it grew into a sort of small charity which works now with basically chefs, with waste ingredients from the industrial food sector, and now that table creates spaces for people to learn to cook in the city. So that's a really exciting example of the way our furniture design facing student ended up working in a very kind of social design area. Fine art at Goldsmiths is a similar story, but with a little bit less rigidity. So every student is given a studio space from the sort of the first day they start to study. And you can see here a student in their studio space in our Ben Pimlock building, which is a bespoke 10 floor building with floor to ceiling glass windows that are faced northwest for kind of optimum natural light for studio practice. And we tend to mix our undergraduate and postgraduate students within this area, because we have this sort of structured but also kind of organic mentor aspect to our fine art program. So if you're in the second year or the third year, you'll have a first year, second year mentee. And if you're in the first year, you have a second year mentor and a third year mentor. And in fine art, in practice, often, particularly if you're working on projects which are very resource intensive or which are just physically quite challenging to create, you will find obviously artists working with assistants quite often. And our mentorship and menteeship program emulates this. So if you're in the first year, I'm afraid you're very likely to be doing some of the donkey work for the installations for the final year project degree shows. And obviously the idea is that you do a bit of the heavy lifting, but at the same time, you learn quite a lot about the formation of idea, the development of a third year's identity as an artist. And of course, you become intimately involved with their projects for their end of degree shows. In the second year, you're in between both. So you've obviously got a sort of an assistant and you're still supporting a third year student. And by the time you're in the third year, you really are calling the shots for your own degree show, and you're able to draw on those resources. And I'm sure the learning is both ways and goes sort of upwards as well as kind of downwards through those that year structure. But Fine Art at Goldsmiths, something else that sets it apart is the access to all of the facilities that the design students have. So you're really not in any way limited in terms of what you create. I've seen students who have created sculptures that are so large that they're not able to be contained within a gallery space. So they're outdoor installations. I've seen a student make a piece of sculptural work, for example, from 2 cars. So that's quite a kind of industrial and pretty heavy installation. And that was in the gallery space, interestingly. I've seen students make entire works from latex and sugar, and those structures and those sculptures have changed throughout the exhibition period due to the nature of the materials and the way they react to the environment, which was kind of part of the aesthetic approach of the artist. And then we have students who do really sort of traditional painting and illustration work as well. So there's a huge variety of work, whether it's kind of sonic and performance-based, it's sculpture, it's visual art, and the same goes for the design program. But that's probably enough from me at the moment, speaking on those two, and I'll pass over to Charlotte.
And thank you very much, Dom. At Loughborough University, we are slightly different from the others in that Loughborough is multidisciplinary. So we teach a whole range of different subjects. But within our creative subjects, we have our School of Design and Creative Arts, and we also have programs within our School of Architecture and Engineering, and within our School of Social Sciences as well. But you can see some of the particular areas on the slide at the moment within the creative subjects. And similar to the other two, very hands-on programs looking at to develop you in the area that you're wanting to develop, whilst opening your eyes to materials, things that you haven't even thought about yet before you get to university. And we really want you to think outside the box. So whether you're taking our foundation year to set you up to go into a degree, whether you're going straight into a degree between fine art to right through to product design engineering, we've got that full spectrum depending where you sit on the scale between being very creative, very kind of fine art, graphic design, through to industrial design, which is the more creative subjects within our design school, user-centered design. We have both user-centered experience design, which is more looking at physical subjects, through to our user experience service design, which is more looking at kind of online service economy, through to product design and technology and product design engineering. So lots of different options for you. Our design school is a £20 million building that was opened about 5 years ago. It is, as you would expect, absolutely designed, and it's got all the opportunities for students to get hands-on, work with our tech staff. Within our School of the Arts, we have 6 creative hubs. So whether you are interested in photography, animation, we've got animation studios, photography studios, through to we have a ceramic studio, which is relatively rare in the UK. And you will get the chance to use all of these facilities, both looking at the materials that you're familiar with and things that you want to start completely from scratch. We've got our textile studios, our weaving spaces, our fashion design, and all of our subjects, like the others, we will be setting you real life industry briefs. You will be choosing and setting your briefs yourself, often entering international competitions. And if I just think of the people who I was a student with when I was at Loughborough, I had a couple of friends that lived on my corridor who did art. One of my friends, April, she did textiles design, and she designed kind of more furniture, and she actually had a set of furniture set with Laura Ashley, which is one of the kind of shops in the UK at that point. She entered this competition, she won, and her furniture designs were created and sold in shops across the UK. Another of my flatmates, who was called Sarah, she also did textiles. She designed a sofa pattern, and that sofa was created, and actually her mum got a new sofa out of this. So she won this competition and her sofa was created. Friends that did fashion design, who are now working with H&M, Topshop, having their courses, the coursework actually used and made into real life products. Other friends who did graphic design and illustration, working on children's books. You know, Geordie says that's what a lot of people aim for. A lot of people go into this. I also had a friend who did an animation project way back when we were kind of looking at plastic bag use, and she did this animation project for a government drive to reduce plastic bag waste, and she put this together as her coursework, and then that was used nationally across the UK to discourage people from using plastic bags. So you're not just studying, you're not just working within kind of the academic environment, you're out there doing things even as a student that can change the world and will look great on your CV. And we also encourage you to take placement opportunities on all of our undergraduate courses, so to take a work placement year and either do one long internship or a number of internships to get that hands-on experience within companies and trial a career as well. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more of what students do when they're at university, all of the different institutions involved this week, including us three, will have examples of our students' work. So when you get to your final year, you will be required as part of your degree to showcase your work through an exhibition, a showcase, so you will get to show off what you have done. Normally these are in person, but of course for the last couple of years they have been virtual. But universities will create a studio, they will show your work, they will invite your friends and family so they can see what you've done as part of your degree, but also they'll invite local industry, they'll invite employers. You get to sell your work as part of this. And also really, really useful for getting graduate jobs, future projects as well. But if you're interested in seeing some of the work that has been created, click through to our different degree shows. You'll also see on different websites that will run different projects, not for our finalists. So for example, at the moment, Loughborough is running our Cultivate exhibition, which is in partnership with a university in Japan. So students on our foundation year and on the foundation year at the Japanese university have come together to create a set of postcards to look at culture across the two countries. And actually some of our students will go and study abroad at the Japanese institution in their second year if they stay at Loughborough. So lots of good opportunities to see the sort of incredible things that are being created within our universities. There's also lots of other ways to find out more about what's going on. So a really good way is to chat to current students. I'm going to plug my session later at 8 p.m. UK time tonight. We have an Ask Me Anything session with 3 university students currently studying at our institutions. It will be hosted by a current university student, and it's your chance to find out what it's actually like to be a student in the UK right at the moment. What does their day look like? What is the student support like? How are they finding it? Why did they choose their institution? And so log on to that session and ask your questions, or if it's a time zone unsuitable for you, watch the recording. They're always great sessions, those Ask Me Anything. But also a lot of our universities will have systems like UniBuddy or opportunities to chat to current students, either before you apply to us or once you've applied, to see what it's like being a student. They'll be honest, you know, they're your peers, speak to them and see what it is like. Another good thing to do is to watch the facilities tours. I think all of our universities on our website will have video tours, photos of what our facilities actually look like. I know for Loughborough, we've got 3 of our current students who film themselves going around our arts facilities and send for the design school. So you can actually see what it's like. Can you imagine yourself studying in that space? Can you get excited about it? You know, if you're at school at the moment and you're looking at doing an undergraduate degree, our art school at Loughborough has more building space than my secondary school had in total for the whole school. It's an insane space, and it was something that was completely unimaginable to me when I moved from school to university. If you're looking at doing a master's program, do we have the facilities that allow you to continue in what your area of interest is? And if you want to find out more as well, universities all have open days, either virtual or in person. Have a look on all of our websites. If you can travel to the UK, if you have that opportunity, go and have a look at the university, look at the campus, the facilities, speak to the staff. Open days are a great opportunity to do that. But if you are in the UK and you want to have a look, I'm sure any of us would be happy to show you around. I do a lot of campus tours for our prospective students. If you can't travel, look at what the virtual options are as well, and they'll all be added on our website, but keep looking as well. So I know that we currently have 3 days advertised on our website, but we'll be adding more events in the autumn as well. So just keep checking university websites. And also, if you're thinking about coming to the UK, if you visited the UK before, you might have been to London. Goldsmiths are based in London. You probably haven't been to Loughborough, possibly been to Norwich, but universities as part of this event this week, we've got universities based in Leeds, based in Cornwall, based in Devon, based all over the UK. So have a think about where you want to live as well, where you want to be studying and what the opportunities are, and also what that brings to your study environment. Are you going to be living in London, which is one of the most creative cities in the world, at a city university, a campus? Very different experience if you go to Goldsmiths than if you come to Loughborough, which is a large campus university based just outside of a town. Neither's right or wrong. It is entirely what is the best fit for you. So that's a really big thing to think about as well when you are studying in the UK. And just a little bit more from me, so a quick introduction to Loughborough. As I mentioned, we are multidisciplinary. So you'll be there as a creative student, studying alongside sports students, business students, engineering students, history students. We do over 120 different subjects at Loughborough. We are over 100 years old. The university started as an engineering university and then merged 25 years ago with Loughborough School of Art to bring the School Art College into the university. We're now top 10 in all UK league tables, and our art and design programs are ranked either first or second in the UK, depending which league table you look at. And the bit that made me choose Loughborough, and the reason that I still live in Loughborough 11 years after I started as a student, is our campus. We are one of the largest single site campuses in the UK. Everything's on that one site, from your studio space, your lectures, through to your accommodation, nightlife, shops, restaurants, doctor's surgery. Basically, we've got everything: student society, sports, so much to get involved with, which makes it a really studenty community. And I love that. It's a very different experience, as I said, to a city university, but for me, that campus environment was exactly what I wanted. And I've never left. Ever since I went to my first open day, I was like, that's it, and I'm still here. So yeah, my contact details will come up at the end. So if you want to find out more about Loughborough, just let me know. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Charlotte. So Goldsmiths, as was mentioned, is in London. I think London's reputation precedes it a little bit, but it is a very exciting place to live. I personally live in London. Goldsmiths is based in southeast of London. It's in Zone 2. So London is 6 sort of municipal urban zones, kind of 8 metro zones, with the centre being Zone 1. So Goldsmiths sits just outside of that. It's about 10 minutes into central London. The campus is served by 3 main tube stations in an area of the city called New Cross. There are nearly 10,000 students at Goldsmiths at the present time, which means that that immediate area around the campus is heavily populated by Goldsmiths students. So you do get a sense of community in what is otherwise a very big, incredibly busy and quite impersonal city. I think what Charlotte has said about considering where you'd like to study is critical. It's really important for you to think where you'd like to spend 3 or 1 or regardless, sort of how much time really, how much time you want to spend in a major city like London. Obviously, pros are convenience, everything at your fingertips. I mean, some of the most incredible art and design available in the world for you to consume at your fingertips. Also, very, very developed kind of employment network and opportunity for you to work while you study and after you study in the city as well. And then there's also the cons. You need to consider the cost of living in London, which is by far the most expensive part of the UK to live in. But one of the nicest things about Goldsmiths is, despite it being in London, despite it being in the city, it is also a campus university. So a single site institution with your accommodation, shops, banks, sports facilities, a cinema, all sorts of things in literally the same physical location. As well as that, you have the campus itself, which feels like it's part of London, strangely, because there's a real huge variety of different buildings, as you can see from the picture. At the top is the Ben Pimlott building, which is the fine art block, which I was describing earlier. And at the bottom is the Richard Hoggart building, which is a huge Victorian sort of quadrant, which the institution was built around originally, which has been there as an educational institution since 1891. So Goldsmiths does have a very long history, but really since 1904, we have been part of the University of London and kind of taken on our current identity as an educational institution. If you're not familiar with the University of London, quickly, it's 18 collegiate institutions around London who share intercollegiate study opportunity, research at the academic level. We also open our libraries up to university students from all of the constituent colleges, which means if you study at Goldsmiths, you can go and access the UCL libraries or the SOAS libraries, some national research libraries that are literally some of the world's most amazing resources for study. And also we have a kind of overarching student union, even though we have our own, called the Student Centre, which serves 160,000 students across all of the University of London institutions, which means that if you can't find a club or society at Goldsmiths, or maybe you play at a particularly elite level, then you will be able to go to that central and overarching student union to find something which is going to fill that need. And obviously, if it doesn't exist, you can always consider creating it. So the reputation of Goldsmiths, as I said earlier, is really for fine art and design. It has been historically. We've got some incredibly famous alumni, which is the main reason why. Georgie earlier mentioned Anthony Gormley, who did graduate from Goldsmiths many, many years ago, and also Oscar winners coming in to teach, and Steve McQueen is probably our most recent graduate, the first person of colour to receive the Best Director Oscar in 2013, I think it was. So we have some fantastic alumni. I could go on and on about them all, but they are all mainly in the arts. And when you are very successful in the arts, you tend to become famous. So that's probably why Goldsmiths, despite being quite a small institution, has got such a huge reputation. I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to pass over to George.
Thanks, Tom. So Norwich University of the Arts is quite different from Goldsmiths and Loughborough, so you've got quite a good range of universities here. Norwich University of the Arts is small, so we have under 3,000 students, and we are totally specialist, purely focused on the creative arts. We were founded originally as an Institute of Technology in 1845, and you can still study in the original fine art building, which you can see in that larger picture. It's the red brick building, and that's where the fine art studios are today. So we are based in a small city which is in the east of England called Norwich, and it's very beautiful. It's full of medieval architecture, and it's a compact and green city. So if you don't want to go to a big city like London, but if you do want to still be in a city centre based campus, it can be a good place for you. And then we offer, obviously, all of our undergraduate programs are really mainly focused in either arts or design or media-based degree programs. So I've given a bit of a list there on the bottom left. And we have one performing arts program, which is acting. So we have 11 buildings, which are really varied. So from the very old buildings, but they're really full of incredible new technology on the inside. Our most recent building opened just September with a new production theatre and an extra 100 student rooms. So I think that's all you need to know for now. Hopefully, if you're interested enough, then you'll go and have a look on the website.
Brilliant, thank you, Georgie. So just popped our contact details up here for you all to make a note of, and please do reach out to us all if you've got any questions at all about the topics we've discussed today, or just generally as international students who are thinking about coming and studying in the UK. I know we'd all be very happy to answer or refer you where we don't know the answer in that eventuality. But we've got a tiny bit of time left, so I think we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A. I'll just say, if you have anything that you're thinking of now, please do get it in the Q&A section, and we'll do our best to get to all the questions. So yeah, anything, no silly questions, just please ask away. You can ask anonymously if you feel like you'd rather your name is not attached to the question. But the first question we've got here is, seeing UK design in the courses, would that also include UI, so interfaces in the digital space? I can't remember whose slide was UX. Was that yours, Charlotte, by any chance?
Both of us have
it was
it.
both of you. Well, Georgie, shall we come to you first? Maybe you've got some thoughts around that, and then yeah, Charlotte, I'm sure if you can add anything, you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, user experience design, yeah, definitely includes user interface, because it's mainly focused on how we interact with digital technology. So whether that's websites or apps, for example. But user experience design can also include physical spaces, for example. But it definitely includes lots of learning about how humans interact with technology and how we can design digital technology better, so it's easier for people to use, and considering different disabilities sometimes in our designs, how we can make it more accessible to a wider audience. So yes, it would. So if you're interested in user interaction, you might also consider creative computing as another undergraduate program that we offer that might be of interest as well. But Charlotte, have you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, just at Loughborough we've got two programs. So we do an MSc in user experience design, and then we do an MA in user experience and service design, which is more on the kind of people side. So yeah, different courses. If you have a look on our website, you can see the kind of breakdowns and modules. Some of them are the same across the two, and then slightly different focuses, which kind of you would expect between an MA and an MSc.
And I'll also add that we do have a computing department at Goldsmiths, which does focus on creative computing programs. And you may find, certainly is the case at Goldsmiths, and Georgie's just said the same thing, that perhaps a digital arts computing program or a creative computing program is where you might find greater exploration of user interface, as well as user experience design. So not always, you won't always be looking within a design department, in other words. So we've got a few questions come in, which is fantastic. So we'll take the next one, which is, for an international student, what if he or she would like to continue practicing his or her art after being, or while self-employed, after taking advantage of the 2-year graduate route visa? Is it possible to stay in the UK without a proper, in inverted commas, job? It's a really good question. I'm very happy to speak about it. Would anybody else like to say anything about this? No. So I would just say that in reality, it's going to be challenging without a full-time job, without sponsorship, to stay in the UK as a self-employed practitioner. But you may be able to apply for a visa if you've managed to attract some funding as a self-employed artist, for example. But it really is a very broad question with kind of legal implications that I'm not really in a position to advise on. What all of our institutions have is an international student advice centre. It's a team of specialist visa and immigration compliance officers who are obviously legally trained to give information and advise about visas and immigration status. So there is support at your university with that. And we also have career services as well, who support not only obviously employed people, but as creative institutions, very experienced in supporting self-employed makers and creators. And our career service at Goldsmiths, and I'm sure it's a very similar story at Loughborough and NUA as well, will continue to support you for 3 years after you've graduated from your programme. So that is a resource that you really should be taking advantage of as soon as you join an institution, and something that you should remember is there for you to help with your continued career beyond graduating, really. So now I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, how are the animation programs taught and focused on? And I'll very quickly just say that at Goldsmiths, we don't have a standalone animation program. We have a media and communications program, which is a 50% theoretical program, 50% practical program. One of the practical specialisms on that program is animation, and you have a choice of which practical specialism you'd like to pursue each year of study. So you could choose, therefore, to join the media and communications program and to focus on animation in the first year, photography in the second year, and the moving image in the third year. It's really up to you if you want a variety or if you want some consistency with the practice. And I will next come to you, Georgie, because you're next to me in the Zoom totem. So what's the situation at NUA?
Yes, so we offer an animation BA program, and the animation program covers like all forms of animation. So it covers digital animation, analog, hand-drawn animation, as well as stop motion animation. So in your first year, you have workshops in all kinds of animation and animation principles. And then in your second and your third year, you collaborate a lot in team projects where you will occupy different roles. And if you wish to, you can start specialize. So if you decide that you want to specialize more as a digital animator, say if you become more interested in the games industry, for example, then you can go down that route. Or if you love actually physically making stop motion animation, then you can work in that format. So there's quite a lot of flexibility within the program to become the animator that you decide you want to be, but you get a full breadth of animation on the course. And Charlotte?
Yeah, so at Loughborough, our animation program actually sits within our BA in graphic design. It used to be called graphic communication and illustration. It's now broad. And within that degree, although it's quite a broad title, you get to focus on the areas that you're interested in. So if you want to go in and do basically just animation, that's absolutely fine. And exactly kind of similar to Georgie, we've got the kind of different levels of animation. You can kind of tailor it to exactly what you're interested in. We've got digital, we've got analog, lots of kind of practical projects, different studio space for you, the ability to take on what you've been doing already, but also look at new kind of methods or new opportunities.
Thanks, Poe. So the next question from Bruna is, Bruna would like to know if we have foundation programs at our institutions, what the application for the foundation year would be, and if you have to apply for the bachelor's degree and then the foundation, or you can just apply directly. So I'll speak to Goldsmiths. situation. We offer what's called an integrated degree in fine art at Goldsmiths, which is essentially only open, interestingly, to international applicants. It's a program which has guaranteed progression onto the BA in fine art. So you apply for the degree as one qualification. So the integrated degree is what you make your application to at this, of course, at bachelor's level. We don't offer a foundation program in art and design for UK-based students. So all of our fine art students are required to hold a foundation, but they must go and study that elsewhere. And then in design, we do not have a requirement for foundation, and we do not offer an integrated degree. So Goldsmiths is a strange situation, but you are actually advantaged as an applicant from overseas if you're interested in fine art in particular. Really quickly, just to explain what the foundation is, in case anybody is not familiar, some programs or some institutions will require it for some programs. It's essentially a one-year pre-degree program on which you generally explore sort of 5 or 6 disciplines of art and design over a 6-week period, and then you end up specializing in one of those areas for the rest of the year. And the reason that it exists, and I think is often a requirement, is because in fine art in particular, but also in design, the teaching experience, the learning experience is very different to a high school learning experience. It's much less direct and didactic. You have a lot more self-directed study. You really need to come to a fine art program or a design program in some institutions with an understanding of a specialism. Now, this isn't the case in all institutions. We all vary, as we'll hear now, but that's what a foundation diploma in art and design is, or a foundation diploma in art, for example, would be. But let's mix it up and go to Charlotte next. What's the situation at Loughborough?
Yeah, so at Loughborough we have our art and design foundation year. Does lead into design courses, but mostly focused on our art programs. It is a direct application through our website for our foundation year. So some students know they want to take the foundation year, and we very much encourage it. So they just apply for the foundation year. Some may prefer to enter directly into the bachelor's program, which is possible. So you would apply through UCAS for our bachelor's programs. Looking for a higher standard, we'd be looking for a really polished portfolio. But because they're separate applications, we do also get some students that apply for both. And you can hold offers for both our foundation and our bachelor's program if you're waiting for results, for example. So the entry requirements for the bachelor's are higher than for the foundation. And you can also speak to our tutors. So if you apply for the bachelor's program and they think that you're not strong enough, they would recommend that you take a foundation, for example. But we really encourage our foundation year. It gives you a really good foundation, a really good basis in different areas. You get to, as Dom said, see what it's like to study at university, take that step up from studying at school, use facilities that you would never have had the opportunity to use before, work with academics who are absolute experts in their field before you then specialize within your bachelor's degree. So it's something that we would really encourage you to look at.
Briefly, because I realise there's a next session starting in 2 minutes. At Anyway, we don't offer a general foundation. We do offer a 4-year degree option. So it does mean that you need to know what course you want to do. So you would apply, for example, to BA animation, but you'd apply to the 4-year program, and you'd have the first 10 weeks with all the other year 0 students, we call them, collaborating together and learning core skills. And then you're actually taught then specifically by the animation course team. So you're already specialized. So it suits you if you know what you want to do, but you're not quite ready to go into the 3-year degree option. But it's not such a good choice if you're not sure yet what the degree major is that you want to choose. In that case, I'd recommend a general foundation program.
Thank you, Georgie, very much. Thank you, Charlotte, also, and thank you all for joining us as participants. We haven't quite managed to get to the last question. In reality, that will definitely vary from institution to institution. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in asking any more questions that you haven't had the time to ask, to get in touch with us all using the contact details we've shared. But for now, thanks again and enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are.